I want to get down to the simplest possible nitty-gritty of what we've been talking about in a very easy way. To ask ourselves the question, quite fundamentally, what's all the trouble about? In other words, what is your state of mind when you contemplate the possibility of everything becoming nothing? Alright, so the universe is a transitory system, like a bubble, like smoke, like foam on the water. And so, how easy? Just go along with it. Dissolve. Then what? What does that do to you when you envisage that possibility? How do you feel inside? Why do you feel that way inside? And really, you can't resist this. Even if you don't believe that that's what's going to happen, that there is some immortality principle, there is spirit or something which outlasts this change. Supposing it changes and changes and changes and changes and then stops changing altogether, because everything, in the end, you know, when the television switches off, the screen goes down to a point which vanishes. Shut off. Supposing that is the conclusion of it all, and anyway, time goes by so fast, doesn't it? And the older you get, the faster it seems to go. When you're a child, time drags a good deal, seems much slower. But as you get old, you begin to read obituary notices with your contemporaries in them, and you see everything changing. You think, well, it won't be long now, after all. And it dissolves. It may be a very painful dissolution, mostly because you're resisting it.
I want a DS so bad. I'm hoping you just pick. Dude,
So,
I got my throw mode on.
what's the
I actually
problem?
have my throw mode on.
Why don't we want to give up?
I've been throwing for like the last 2 hours.
What do we think we're going to get by holding on and by resisting the dissolution? Now, I'm not saying at the moment that, as I'm a sort of preacher, advocating giving up. What I'm interested in, for you to feel, is what do you really feel like inside at the prospect of there being nothing, of this whole thing being a bubble that dissolves?
Rick, help! Rick has a syringe.
You see, about death, the reality of approaching death, people are apt to feel chilly, cold, lonely, scared because it's an unknown. The most frightening thing about death is there might be something beyond it, and you don't know what it is. You remember facing the world as a child, or at any time. The world is full of threats, mostly from other people. And there are monsters. There are all sorts of things which scare you, but beyond every monster is death. Dissolution is the end of it all. And by and large, the art of government is to fill that void beyond death with threats of a rather unspecified nature, so that we can rule people by saying, if you don't do as I tell you, I'll kill you, or you'll kill yourself. And so long as we can be scared of that, and so long as we can be made to think of death as a bad thing, we can be ruled. And that is why no government likes mystics. Because if we define the mystic as the person who is no longer scared of death, because the mystic is, in the simplest possible language, the person who understands that you have to have nothing to have something.
You know you want some. You know you want some.
So, you can't fundamentally scare the mystic with death. Because, say, well, what end can it all come to? What's all the trouble about? The most it can come to is nothing. I mean, there may be some troubles on the way of resisting this, basically resisting it. I mean, as you might say, the very cells in your body resist their dissolution. And so, in this resistance, there's an experience called pain, which we've been discussing. But beyond pain is annihilation. Or so it seems, anyway. What will it be like to go to sleep and never wake up? Nobody can think about it. Now, wait a minute. Nobody can think about it. But what is that state when you're teased out of thought? See, get with it. Going to sleep and never waking up. This is not, as you would fantasize it, a state of being in the dark forever. It is not like being buried alive, because then there's an experience of darkness. Now, I remember a little while ago having at one of my seminars a girl who was born blind. And I had the most interesting discussion with her, because she doesn't know what darkness is. The word is absolutely meaningless to her, because she's never seen light. Now, so, when you really think about nothingness, it becomes like how your head looks to your eyes. And behind the eyes, you don't see darkness, do you? Right now. You're not aware of a contrast of light here, black there. Behind the visual field, this way, you can't see darkness. There is simply nothing conceivable at all. Neither darkness nor light. See? All right. So, might one venture to say almost that area of blankness we call death is what lies behind the eyes. In other words, it is what we can't think about. That's what's watching. In other words, the farthest we can go in thinking about nothing, you see, we get to the root of the matter. Let me put this in another way. The world is form. Now, you cannot look for the origin of form in form. Because what you would get then would be a universe where you couldn't make out any form at all because there was so much of it. It would be like writing a letter on top of a newspaper. But one can read, one can see form, one can see the world, simply because there's always emptiness behind it. So you see, in this way, emptiness being the mother of form. And you can always say, yes, only the form is there, that's all that's real. But that is only saying it's all that is figure. What about background? It always has to be there. So let's go on then into our visualization, our imagination. Use your imagination for all it's worth. To think yourself into the fact that this whole sense of importance, of vitality, of aliveness, of being is simply a sudden experience which was nothing before it started and will be nothing after it's over. That is the simplest possible thing you could believe in. It requires no intellectual effort. Nothing.
Pop it.
Supposing
please.
That's the way it is.
Please pop it.
Now I repeat. what's your inside feeling about that? Supposing, let's say, you feel sorry. For whom is this sorry? Who, when it's all over, will there be to feel sorry? But when it's come to an end, nobody will either regret or be happy about it. That will be that. So in a way you can say, well, this feeling of sorrow that I have that it's going to come to an end is really rather irrelevant, because let me look at the thing from the other direction. Supposing it never would come to an end. In other words, here is this alternation of joy and sorrow. And however happy I am today, I'm always going to feel miserable later on. And then maybe happy again, but then after that miserable. And this is never going to stop. I just can't get rid of the damn thing. Well, that's pretty depressing, isn't it? I mean, when you think it through. So you say, well, let's make a compromise between these two possibilities. One is that this compromise is, in other words, that it will disappear altogether, but then it'll start again. Because when it starts again, it'll feel like it does now, which is that it never happened before. So you're always in the same place, just like you feel now. That's supposing that the Hindus are right, that the universe lasts for 4,320,000 years, and then it vanishes, and then it starts and runs for another 4,320,000 years, and then it vanishes, and it does it again. And it does it, and does it, and does it, and does it, and there is no end to this. But fortunately, because of the forgettery, every 4,320,000 years, it doesn't become a totally insufferable bore. There is this blank space, this trough between the crests of the waves. You see? Now the Hindus thought about that, and they got tired, and they thought about the possibility of moksha, liberation, or nirvana, from the everlasting cycle of appearing and disappearing. But then when they had thought that through, the Buddhists, for example, having really said, now we've got the trick, as the Buddha said after his enlightenment, now I found you out, you who build the house. I'm going to take the house apart. The roof beam is brought down. Desire is the builder of the house. See, I found you. Never again shall you build it. And the Buddhists thought that one over. Yes, they're crazy. We found a way out of samsara, the wheel of birth and death. And somebody one day said, but, isn't that rather selfish? You get yourself out. What about all the other people? Don't you have any feeling of compassion? Oh yes, they said, of course. We forgot that, didn't we? Let's come back again and help all these people out. Then they got very sophisticated about it, and they said, look, if nirvana is released from birth and death, then they're opposed. And so nirvana and birth and death go together, and they will have to imply one another. So you're only really released if you see that. If you see that nirvana and birth and death are the same thing. Now I'm going to pull a fast one. So every time an incarnation occurs, it feels like this one. See, it might be quite different. We might be reincarnated in another universe as beings of an altogether different shape. See? Not at all like human beings. But because we were used to it, we would feel that that was the human shape. We would say, well, that's natural. Obviously, that's the way things are. So naturally, if you appeared in the form of a spider, you would look around at other spiders and say, well, yes, of course, this is natural shape to be in. This is the human shape.
Yeah, I got you.
Something that is not us looks at us and thinks we look perfectly terrible. I mean, imagine how you look to a fish. Clumsy, cumbersome, stupid-looking thing. As a fish is so elegant and graceful and can slide through the water so beautifully. The human beings can't even swim properly. So don't you see that in every world that comes into being, or could come into being, it seems just like it seems now. And every species that you could belong to would seem like this one. It would have its up end of what is highly intelligent, and its low end of what is not so intelligent. You would be aware of superior forces and inferior forces. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the idea of mastering a situation unless there were situations you couldn't master. Now, we are not aware of species, of beings above us, unless you cultivate those forms of psychic awareness where you think you're in touch with angels, or something of that sort. But the things that appear to be above us are great natural processes. Only we think they're rather stupid, only very tough, too strong for us. Earthquakes, the elements, also some little ones. See, the virus is a very troublesome being. And this is where a human being really finds himself at his wit's end in dealing with molecular biology. So, you know, if the monsters don't get you, the minsters will.
The insects.
The insects. You see? But at any rate, whatever level you're on, it always appears to be the same one. This one. Now, we, therefore, naturally, don't we? We feel we're in the middle. We feel, for example, with the telescope, that there is a world greater than us that is infinitely greater. We feel with the microscope there's a world below us that's infinitely smaller, and we seem to stand in the middle. Of course you seem to stand in the middle. Every creature stands in the middle, because if you stand on a boat in the middle of the ocean and you turn around through an angle of 360 degrees, you will see the same distance in every direction. That's because you see. And your sensitivity to sight or the intensity of light is the same in every direction. So you're in the middle. You're always in the middle. Where else would you be? In other words, anything that perceives anywhere is always in the middle.
Like anime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you like Demon Slayer? Do you like Demon Slayer?
Oh. Demon Slayer.
水の呼吸
水の呼
一
吸。
の型
みなもぎり。
みなもぎり日の神かぐらアム
本当に好きみたいだね。
Sorry, my don't speak English. Sorry.
I can speak Japanese a little.
大根だ。もうちょっとちっちゃくなりますね。よいしょ。
私はルナです。よろしくお願いします。
殺してください。
ナイスメッセ
殺してください。その殺してみたいに。何それ持ちネタだったりします？
日本から来ましたか？
なんか、
じゃあ、
お塩
はい。
として麺ぶりしてチキン大根になっちゃいました。
お塩しちゃったの？
日本人
どうした
だ。
んズボ話ズボ、聞こうがズボ。
入ってる入ってる。先っぽ入ってる。
いやもうフルですわ。
Okay.
Okay.
そっか。あ、麺ぶりしちゃったんですね。
麺ぶりして辞任大根になっちゃいました。
英語な、喋ったり聞いたりできたら